All right, today we're jumping into the mind of John Locke. He was an English philosopher, but his ideas about life, liberty, and government, well, they didn't just challenge his world, they basically built ours. But to really get why his ideas were such a big deal, we have to first understand the world he was arguing against. So picture this. This was the vision of another super famous philosopher, Thomas Hobbes. His take was that without a ruler with absolute power, our natural state is just pure violent chaos, a constant war where it's every man for himself. Sounds pretty awful, right?
But what if humanity wasn't actually doomed to tear itself apart without a king? What if deep down our natural state was actually one of peace and reason? And that one simple question, that's where John Locke walks onto the stage and completely changes the game.
Look, to understand Locke's philosophy, you have to understand the guy's life. He wasn't some academic just scribbling away in a quiet library. No, this was a man forged in the fire of one of the most chaotic times in English history. I mean, just think about this for a second. Locke was only 10 years old when a brutal civil war broke out. He lived long enough to see his country completely fall apart, execute its own king, and then later go through another revolution that totally rewrote the rules of government. This wasn't some abstract theory for him. This was the reality happening right outside his window. It forced him to ask a huge question. What is government even for? So Locke's answer actually starts at the exact same point as Hobbes's, with a really fundamental question. At our core, what are human beings really like? But boy, did he come to a radically different conclusion. And the contrast here is just night and day. Hobbes basically saw us as creatures driven by pure, selfish impulse. But Locke had a much more balanced view. He said, sure, we have passions, we're self-interested, I get that. But he believed we also have reason. And our reason tells us, hey, if I respect your rights, you'll probably respect mine. It's not about being a saint. It's about being smart and self-interested in a rational way. And this whole idea of reason leads directly to the absolute cornerstone of his philosophy, natural rights. Locke's big idea was that just by virtue of being human, you are born with certain rights that can't be taken away. They don't come from a king, they don't come from a government, they are just yours, period. And for Locke, the big three were life, liberty, and property. Okay, so let's really dig into this. If we're all born with these natural rights and we have the reason to respect them, what does a world without any government actually look like? So forget that brutal dog-eat-dog world Hobbes imagined. Locke thought the state of nature was actually pretty peaceful for the most part. Because people are rational, they naturally understand what he called the law of nature, which is basically a simple rule. Don't mess with other people's life, liberty, or property. It was a state of freedom, not a state of fear. And this, of course, raises the obvious question, right? If things were generally okay before government, why on earth would we bother creating one in the first place? Well, Locke had a great word for the problems: inconveniences. He knew that while it was mostly peaceful, the state of nature had some serious bugs. What happens when someone lets their anger get the best of them and they steal your stuff? Who settles the dispute? You can't call the cops. There's no judge to hear your case. You're forced to be your own judge, jury, and executioner. And that's just not a stable system. So, to solve these inconveniences, people decide to form a state. But, and this is a huge but, the way they do it in Locke's world is completely different from Hobbes's model. This isn't about escaping death. It's about protecting the liberty you already have. And the difference is absolutely fundamental. For Hobbes, you surrender everything. You give up all your rights to a king in exchange for not being killed. For Locke, you don't surrender your rights at all. You just entrust the government with a very specific job: to act as a neutral referee. The government is your employee, not your master. And he saw this happening in two distinct stages. First, everybody gets together and unanimously agrees to form a community, to be one team. Then, step two, that community decides, by majority rule, to set up a government. Now notice, the government isn't part of that first deal. It's a tool created by the people to serve the people. So, the crucial point, the main takeaway, is this: the government has a very, very limited job description. It exists for one reason and one reason only: to protect the natural rights that people already had. Anything it does beyond that is an overreach of its power. Now, all of this builds up to Locke's most radical and probably his most famous idea. It's a concept that truly lays the foundation for our modern world, and it puts all the power in the hands of the individual. All of Locke's ideas really boil down to this one powerful philosophy: individualism. It's the belief that the individual, not the king, not the state, is the one who is sovereign. The state is just a tool we create to protect our rights. And for a government to be legitimate, it has to have the consent of the people it's governing.
And here it is, the ultimate check on power, the final safety valve. If the government breaks the trust the people put in it, if it starts violating rights instead of protecting them, then the people have every right to get rid of that government and start over. I mean, back then, that was an absolutely explosive idea.
And that, right there, is Locke's lasting legacy. This simple but incredibly profound idea that government is created by the people, for the people, and it only exists to protect their rights. It's the absolute bedrock of modern liberal democracy. You can literally hear echoes of his words in documents like the American Declaration of Independence. So that leaves us with a big question for our own time. If we take Locke's framework, this idea of a government built on trust, what does it actually look like today when that trust gets broken? He was asking that question over 300 years ago, and it's one we're still grappling with all over the world.